Hi, this is Mark Alexander. I am Chief Strategy Officer here at the TD Jakes Foundation. Terry, it is so good to see you.
So great to see you too, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Great. No, it's great to have you here. Excited for the conversation. So tell me a bit more about yourself and your company.
Sure. So I've been trading stocks for 15 years, but I started it as a side hustle. I started trading stocks while I was in education just to supplement my income. But I started doing pretty well in it. And I also started having just really tough time at work. So I said, you know what? I think I'm going to try to make this side hustle of trading into my full time thing. So I left my job as assistant principal, started traveling all over the world, and it actually became a thing. People started asking me to teach them, girl, how did you learn how to afford that flight with stocks? Did that, then made it into a course called Trade and Travel. It became the number one course in the world for about 3 years. And that's what I just love to do. I love to teach people how to use stocks to do the things you want and you love.
What mindset shift helped you go from sort of a side hustle to building long-term freedom through trading?
When I was in my job, like I had been doing it for a while by that time. I was about a decade into the job and I was starting to feel like it's time to make a move, but I was so afraid. Like I remember it was toxic. I was eating and stressed out all the time. Like everything felt so hard, but I was holding on to it because I didn't want to lose my insurance.
Yeah.
And it's those kind of limiting beliefs like, I've got to stay in this because there's nothing better.
hmm
Got to stay in this because it's too late for me to learn something new.
So, how did you learn how to trade in a way that helped you sort of eliminate or mitigate those limiting beliefs?
In the beginning, it was tough. I'll tell you the truth. Like the first 6 years, I was trying to figure it out by myself and I was losing. I'd make a little bit of money here, just finding a company that I liked. You know, they always tell you invest in what you know. So, like, I had a Ford car. So I said, well, let me buy Ford stock. But as you know, being, working in the financial industry, Ford stock was not a good stock. So,
Right.
I just didn't know. So the first 6 years was hit and miss. Then I started taking some classes. And in the classes, I started putting it together with all the mistakes that I had made in the past. And I started realizing, like, okay, it starts first with picking the right companies, like picking
Mhm,
healthy companies.
mhm.
Oftentimes, I feel like we dumpster dive a little bit when we don't have a lot of money. So we try to find the penny stocks, or we try to find the company that's really cheap, but oftentimes they're cheap for a reason. So I started learning how to pick more healthy companies. Then I started learning about reading charts because I found out that they help you have a better pricing, like a better entry and exit point. That made me have more profit during my trades because now I could be more accurate. But then I started learning about risk management. Like, how
Mhm,
do you protect yourself when you lose? Oh, there's things called stop losses, and there's things
mhm.
like your quantity size. So for me, it was a lot of learning randomly by chance and then getting into some courses and classes where I could fine tune my strategy.
So you've helped tens of thousands of students launch their trading journeys. What's a real life example of how trading has empowered someone to really transform their life? Whether it's paying off debt, leaving a job, or achieving a long-term financial goal.
You know what? The first one that comes to mind is one of my students named Chris. And Chris actually, he ended up becoming a coach and then now is doing some fabulous things. But he started hearing me on an Amazon truck. He was a coach at a school, but then in his part time job, he worked delivering packages for Amazon. And I was on the radio talking about the stock market. And he tells me the story all the time. He's like, Terry, I was on in the car delivering boxes for Amazon. And I was like, I should own Amazon stock. I should own part of this company. So he started out with a $500 portfolio and started investing. And he actually sent me a message recently. Recently, he made his full teacher salary in a day just
Wow.
from trading stocks. And it's been 3 years. So it's not overnight, but
Yeah.
it's been some time. But in just that time, he went from a $500 portfolio and having a part-time job at Amazon while also working in education to now being able to trade his whole teacher salary. So that's one of my favorites. I'm going to give you a little bit of not happy advice here, like controversial a little bit, and then we'll go into how do they start. So one controversial advice, I'm going to put on my minister Terry hat. Like, I don't know, Mark, did you know I went to DTS, Dallas Theological Seminary?
Yes, I did. I read that. Yes,
Yeah.
I read that.
So, so first I'm gonna put on my ministry hat, and then I'm gonna put on my finance hat.
Okay.
So my ministry hat would say investing, but more so trading stocks the way I do, like on a daily, weekly basis is very stressful. And I don't want to lie to someone and say that, oh, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you should add on trading because it's stressful. And if you're paycheck to paycheck, you're probably already stressed out enough. So
Mhm.
now you're going to be adding on something else that's emotional about like losing your money on top. So as a minister, I would say, I actually want you to get out of being paycheck to paycheck before you start actively trading
Got it.
because it is stressful. But then I'll put on my finance hat. The only way, though, that you're going to actually be able to increase your money exponentially is investing.
And so for someone out without the initial sort of investment capital to make trading decisions, are there trading simulators that they could use to start to learn the process and patterns of trading?
Oh, yes. So every broker out there lately, so you know this, Mark, from E-Trade, but every broker now has not every, but a lot of the big ones. So we have like Charles Schwab now has Thinkorswim. We have E-Trade. There's Interactive Brokers. They all have a component where you can trade with paper money. I think this is good for two reasons. One, if you open the brokerage account and fund it with a little bit of money, let's just say if you can fund it with $100, if there is like a April Liberation Day crazy, the stocks are down, a sale in the market, you already have some money in your brokerage account. You are ready to go. You can put it to work. But while you're learning, you can also trade with paper money. So yes, there are lots of simulators out there. If you don't have a brokerage account, there's also TradingView is one that's really nice. I like it a lot. Has good tools. It's a simulator. Investing.com, that's a good one to practice with charts. So there's several out there where you can practice with paper money.
So how do you teach, people the process of, having losses in a way that really builds their long-term resilience instead of fear? And of course, fear and greed really drive oftentimes market decisions in the stock market. So how do you help people sort of manage their emotions during the trading process?
One, using your discipline to follow that trading plan. Like that's actually what takes all the butterflies away. If you know that every time I'm taking a trade, I'm finding out my risk management, I'm doing all my steps, that helps. But another big part of that is reward to risk ratio. So one of the pieces I didn't tell you about in the trading plan is making sure that every time you take a trade, your reward is 3 times your risk. What that allows you to do is you can lose 3 times and win once and still break even. So Terry, I'm a teacher at heart. So what does that look like in practical sense? So if I'm taking a trade and each time I lose, my loss is about $10, but when I win, I have the ability to make $30. That's a reward to risk. That's 3 to 1. So 30 times for reward versus $10 of risk.
How do you think about short-term trading in the context of long-term economic trends?
Honestly, if you are listening to any kind of news, and I know that we're talking to a global world right now, but I'll speak to the African American community. Right now, a lot of our news is doom and gloom. Like we've been worried since the election, we've been worried since the president came into office about what was going to happen. And so like we've kind of folded up our stuff and just take it to the house. Like we picked up our chairs at the game and we ready to go home. We've called it a day and we're coming back out in 4 years. But the problem with that is that the stock market is also at all-time highs right now. And so we're missing out on a lot of gains because we're worried about what's going to happen in the economy versus trading what actually is in our face.
Yes.
What's in our face right now is that the stock market is still resilient. What's in our face right now is that technology companies are still pushing forward because they have a lot of their own cash. No matter what the tariffs say,
Yeah.
they're still profitable. What's happening right now is the AI companies are coming onto the scene and they are making waves and headwinds. What's happening right now is although the unemployment numbers are going up, AI is allowing us to still be efficient with less people so the companies can still be profitable. So we've got to trade what actually the market is giving us versus our feelings. That's hard, especially for people of color. I know that we're talking to everybody, but that often can be hard for us.
If you could leave the audience with one piece of advice for, not just trading, but really designing your investments and your long-term wealth building approach to leave a legacy, what would that be?
Be willing to do something different and in a different way. I'm going to put my minister hat back on for a second. I feel like we're in a situation right now where we're going to be asked to do some things that are different than what we've ever done before. Even in investing, like you might be afraid of it. You may think that it's too risky, but God's like, no, the way that we're going to move forward is that you're going to actually have to invest. And it might feel different. It might feel odd, but this is the time where you've got to move forward even when you're afraid or when it doesn't make sense. And so that's the advice that I would give people. Move forward. Even if it doesn't make sense right now, you can do it. Do it afraid.
That's